Thank you.
I added another tail too.
And straight shooter, that's awesome. Wow, I'm going to put that on my business card. What I wanted to discuss today was to bring the concept of bravery down to a level that you feel that it's achievable. And everyone in this room has the opportunity to be brave. In fact, everyone in this room has the opportunity to be a badass. And how I know that is that Jen Cunningham right here a few days ago tweeted, "Oh, I'm so excited to go hear at Sheila S. speak because she's a badass." And that just made my day, my week, my month. And I want you to know that when you hit 52 and you're slightly doughy and you have hopefully artfully covered gray hair and you don't look like Chuck Norris, but you too can still be a badass. So thank you, Jen, for that.
You're way prettier than Chuck Norris.
Yeah, well, yeah. Chuck's had a rough life. So, yeah. But he's Chuck. Yeah, what can you say? Before I move on here, I want to point out this particular photograph is from the home of a brave person. One of the points I want to make sure that you walk away with today is that, sometimes you have bravery thrust upon you and you certainly don't want it. But this is the front window of Medgar Evers's home in Jackson, Mississippi. Those of you who know your civil rights history know that Medgar was an NAACP field agent. He was also an Army veteran. He had a degree from Alcorn State. He did all kinds of amazing things, but he was gunned down in his driveway by a coward named Byron de la Beckwith from across the street. Medgar was carrying a box of T-shirts from an NAACP meeting that said Jim Crow must go, gunned down in his own driveway, and the bullet ricocheted off of him, the one that killed him, and went in through the front window of the Evers' house. Merle Evers, who's his wife, I believe is still alive, and that house has now become a museum. So I wanted something that was somber to start out with, although there is some humor here, but I wanted to right away move into the tough stuff with regard to bravery, but there is some humor as well. Somehow the U.S. Marine Corps and World War I gave us a number of motivational quotes, and as a Navy veteran who worked with Marines, I know a lot of these. This particular one, of course, is NSFW, so I do apologize, but hey, it was the middle of the Western Front, so give the guy a break. The person who said this was a Marine Sergeant Major, Dan Daly. This is during the Battle of Belleau Wood, and this guy was already a two-time Medal of Honor winner. One from actions in Haiti, and his other Medal of Honor was from actions in China with the Boxer Rebellion. So I would think if you are working with Sergeant Major Daly and you know the guy's a two-time Medal of Honor winner, when he says, get your ass out of the hole in the ground and run and get the other guy, you're gonna go. And the point of this is that brave people have a sense of humor many times, but it's a rather mordant sense of humor. But sometimes you have to look at what's in front of you and there's nothing to do but laugh and throw yourself into machine gun fire. In fact, Daly survived survived the war in Belleau Wood and lived until I think 1929. This is from another Marine, Captain Lloyd Williams, and this was in response to a French officer who suggested that the captain and his men withdraw from a defensive line on the Western Front. And this was Williams's attitude. We just got here. We have business left to do. Step aside. Unfortunately, he did not live through the ensuing battle. But the point of this is that brave people know what needs to get done, and they don't stop, and they don't leave until it's done. This is a local guy, sort of. This is Doris. Yes, his mom, dad, I don't know what they were thinking, but they named him Doris. No surprise, he went by Dory. This is Doris Miller, and he is from just up the road in Waco. I knew about Miller already. He's part of Navy lore, but I didn't realize he was from Waco until I was sitting outside the Corsicana Bakery there in Waco that you pull off and get the fruitcake, and I had a friend who actually wanted a fruitcake. You know, brave guy is going to do the fruitcake thing. And I pulled open my field trip app on my phone, and it said the historical marker for Doris Miller is just about a half a mile away from you. And I had a mission. I had to be someplace I couldn't stop, but that really struck me. Hey, he's from right up the road in Waco. He was a cook aboard the West Virginia because, of course, black folks at that point in the military couldn't do many tasks, and especially the Navy, which has absolutely been a stalwart keeper of the white flame for a very long time. That's changed clearly, but at the time in the 40s, that's what Miller could do, was be a cook, so he was. This is from during Pearl Harbor. The Japanese, of course, were attacking all the battleships that were lined up like sitting ducks on Battleship Row. I believe it's on the West Virginia, and the ship was listing. There had been torpedo bombs blown up. Miller went out under fire, and he was a very big guy, went out and helped carry the wounded, including his own captain, assisting with medical relief. But then he could still see that planes were flying in and dropping bombs and torpedoes and continuing to attack the West Virginia. So he went over and got into an anti-aircraft, essentially machine gun, and began shooting at Japanese planes. He had had no training in operating this particular piece of weaponry, but he knew he needed to do it. And he said later that he felt that he probably, hopefully he got some Jap planes, although it was hard to tell, he says, with all the smoke and the activity going on. He did not survive the war. He transferred to a couple of other ships. He got the Navy Cross for his actions at Pearl Harbor, and then the Liscum Bay was torpedoed during the war and went down with hundreds of people, and he was listed missing, presumed dead. But here's a local guy from Waco. Brave people do what needs to be done, whether they think they know what they're doing or have had training or have expertise or not. They see what needs to get done. They don't stand around saying, geez, you know, nobody taught me how to do that. They get in, strap it on, and make things happen when things need to be made happen, and that's what Doris Miller did. This is Howard Gilmore. He's a submariner. You can call submarines boats, but you don't call ships boats, by the way. So for a little bit of Navy, trivia there. If you're ever around a submarine, it's okay to call it a boat. Don't ever get on a ship, though, and call it a boat. This is Howard Gilmore. He was aboard USS Growler, also during World War II. And he was in action against a number of Japanese ships. In fact, they were in close quarters because back then, the way that submarines attacked was a lot more vulnerable than today. They were on the surface a lot more, so they could be seen, they could be shot at, you could drop bombs on them. And that's exactly what was happening to Growler. She was being raked with fire. She was close in quarters, and so Gilmore made the decision that the only way he was going to get this ship that they were after was to ram it, so he did. So the bow of the Growler later was basically bent this way when they were pulled in for repairs. But in the process of ramming the ship, the whole bridge was raked, and there were people raked with fire. The people were killed. He was wounded. And it was time to take the submarine below the water, okay, where it was safer, other than from depth bombs, but one thing at a time. That's how you do it. It's like take care of one crisis at a time. So he knew that everyone drops down through the conning tower, a very narrow ladder, down into the operating area, the Combat Information Center operating area. You close the hatch and then you submerge. But you have to be able to get down the ladder, and he was so wounded that he could not make his way over to the conning tower and get down the ladder. Everybody else who wasn't dead already had dropped down into the conning station area. He knew he wasn't going to make it, so he shouted down the ladder, "Take her down," which means lower the submarine, submerge the submarine, and he did not follow. He said, "Take her down." They shut the hatch, left him up there, and they came back later to look for him and never did find his body. So it's part of submarine lore, take her down, that you, as a brave person, recognize immediately what needs to be done for the greater good, and don't hesitate, do it. And that's what he did. A little more recent, many of you are aware of Todd Beamer, who was on United Airlines Flight 93, who, because of cell phone communications, of course, the passengers discovered that the 9/11 attacks were occurring in New York and in Washington, D.C., and they were over Pennsylvania. The decision was made amongst the passengers, as best can be pieced together from cell phone records and recordings later, that many of the passengers decided that they were going to prevent another attack with the aircraft that they were flying on, and gathered together people, and it is surmised that they got one of the carts that they put in the aisle on aircraft and rammed it into the cockpit. Whatever it was they did, they crashed the aircraft into a field in Shanksville. Shanks, it's not Shanks? Shoot. Pennsylvania. But the last word that Todd was on the phone with a customer service person trying to discuss the process, the last thing that this person heard was Todd say, all right, guys, you ready? Let's roll. Sometimes you have to be the brave person. Sometimes you realize that what it is you're going to do is the last thing that you're going to do, and you didn't wake up that morning wanting to be the brave person or deciding that you were going to be the brave person. You're just a guy on an aircraft, and the next thing you know, you're crashing it into a field in Pennsylvania, and that's the end of you. But when it's time to do the right thing, do it. Brave people do it, even if they didn't wake up that morning thinking that they were going to have to do it. So that's some heroic bravery. I wanted to kind of lead in with the big stuff because that's a pretty high bar to set. But as you can see, there are a variety of people who found bravery within themselves in a variety of situations and made things happen. But everyday bravery is something that everyone in this room is capable of building within themselves. And here are my suggestions for how to go about doing that. The first thing is to develop your own physical bravery. This terribly flattering photo of me is, and there was actually a nicer one on a bicycle, but I picked the really, really butt ugly one for you this morning. Is coming out of the water at a triathlon. After a triathlon, of course, you do open water swim, and then you get on a bike and ride it around, then you jump off the bike and you run. And I have done a number of triathlons in life. I know it's kind of a little hard to believe, but yes, doughy old women do triathlons as well. And part of building your bravery, and I consider bravery almost like a muscle, you keep testing it and using it, and you can strengthen your own inner bravery. There is a mind-body connection that really does exist. When your body is strong, or when you are confident in your body's abilities, even maybe if it's not as strong as you would like, that translates into mental toughness, I have found. So one way to build your own stores of inner bravery is to test yourself, test your physical limits with things that you don't think that you can do, and you go and you do them anyway. The human body is an extraordinary thing. One of the ways that I became a badass was to get into triathlons because really, they get way more cred than they should. You swim, you bike, you run. Any kid can swim, bike, run. Honestly, that's the big secret. They're not that bad, and it's not that badass to be a triathlete. It really isn't, okay? But I never saw myself as an athlete. I fenced in college, as in sword fighting, not building fences. I'm a city kid, don't know what to do with fences and agricultural equipment. But I did not have a background as an athlete. But I could swim, and I could ride a bicycle, and I can run very, very slowly. So I decided triathlons, because then you're never bored training because you're not doing the same thing. You're always doing something different. And I was embarrassed my husband and I were talking last night. It's been 17 years since I did this, but I did a half Ironman triathlon in Philadelphia. That is a huge reason why I have a lot of the confidence that I have today. And I commend it to you. If you don't want to do a half Ironman, find something equally in terms of a BHAG, big hairy ass goal, and go do it, okay? Because you come out of the water and you think, I've just survived a swim in open water. This was in a triathlon in London. I can't even remember where I swam, but it probably wasn't clean. Oh well. Then you get on the bike, and then when you get off the bike, then you have to go run. You finish with that, really, what is there to be afraid of in life? I also highly recommend childbirth. Once you've done that twice, and do a half Ironman, are you kidding me? What can possibly be more scary than being split in half from dropping 2 kids or doing one of these things? Honestly, for you guys out there, man, just be glad. Just be glad, okay? Build that armor of bravery by challenging yourself physically. Now, doing a triathlon, all right, whoop-de-doo. Here is someone who is truly physically brave every single day of her life. The photos here are a little bit blurry. I apologize for that. But part of this is that the person in the middle, Glenda Watson Hyatt, she is at Glenda WH, all one word, on Twitter. Glenda has cerebral palsy. And so she is spastic. She's constantly moving like this. And as she has, one of her great jokes is, everyone tells me I look like I'm bobbing for apples. What's funny is that, I'm the only one who can see the apples. She's always moving, and so it's hard to get a good photograph of her. She has a marvelous sense of humor. She is wheelchair bound. She does everything she does with her left thumb. So if you're looking for her, if you Google left thumb blogger, you will find Glenda. So the next time you're sitting in front of your computer whining that something isn't working, put your butt into a wheelchair and try to do your whole damn day with your left thumb, and then come tell me how hard your life is, okay? This is Glenda at South by Southwest. She was a speaker, but there were some problems. The lift that was supposed to put her up on the stage at South by Southwest in 2011 did not work. They tried, they messed with it, they fiddled with it, they brought in all kinds of people from the convention center staff, blah, blah, blah. The lift did not work. And here is Glenda before her presentation, looking at these people, fiddling around with something that didn't work. They didn't have a ramp. And so what had to happen was that Glenda had to get up out of her wheelchair before her presentation in front of a room full of people she doesn't know and spastically move her body up these 2 steps here to get up onto the stage. They might as well have been 22 steps. 2 steps to Glenda is a lot of steps. She can navigate, she has enough of that, but it is a sweaty, difficult, huffing, puffing, physical exertion for her, and she had to do it before a speaking engagement in front of a room full of people at, the biggest tech conference in the world. But she did it because she is brave. She got up on the stage, there she is, and ran her presentation and got together with Hugh Forrest later and discussed accessibility issues. But to me, that is a hell of a lot more brave than fiddling around, in some wetsuit in a triathlon, okay? Every single day, Glenda needs to bravely push against the barriers that cerebral palsy has laid upon her, and she doesn't whine about it, she doesn't carry on about it. Fabulous sense of humor. She also likes a good strong margarita, so if you ply her with margaritas, I highly recommend that because she also does a lemur call that will just crack you up. But physical bravery, brave people push their bodies through when they don't want to. Obviously, there's a line here between bravery and just old-fashioned self-discipline, okay? And I get that. But to be pushed to your physical limits before a performance, essentially, at a major event really put me in awe of Glenda, and that to me is true physical bravery, and she does it every single day. If you want to become a badass, I highly recommend failing massively at something. This is me at the Panama Canal. Having gone through the Panama Canal and the Suez Canal, I have to tell you I recommend the Panama Canal. The Suez is truly a ditch. It's through the sand. There's like blown up tanks from the Arab-Israeli wars in the past alongside. There's not much to see. Panama Canal, lush, tropical, jungly, much more attractive. I was the chief engineer of a fleet oiler in this particular photo, and I was not a good chief engineer. I tried, but I just was not a good fit at this job. I didn't meet my own standards. The ship did okay, my performance results were okay, but I knew I sucked. If you are experiencing a job or a task where despite your best efforts you are a failure, that actually helps exercise your bravery muscle because the worst thing has already happened to you. You've already bombed. You've already failed. You've already blown it. You've already disappointed yourself and other people. So for the rest of your life, your response to some sort of crisis is, I'm not having to go through childbirth, I'm not having to do a half Ironman triathlon, and I've already bombed at a job and I'm still alive, so what? Bring it. So I look back at this experience now with much different eyes than when I was in it. And I know we talk a lot about the importance of failure, and it sounds great until you're the one failing, okay? And it's still painful for me to look back at this tour. I wanted so much to be good, but I think I read somewhere, there was a great description of people who are in jobs that they are ill-suited to. It's like being let's say a comedic actor or actress. You walk up on stage, you think you're gonna do a comedy routine, and they hand you the script for Hamlet. And you think, I can do this, I can do this. You can't do this, okay? You feel like you're just the wrong person in the wrong job at the wrong time, and you tell yourself, I ought to be able to figure this out. I ought to be able to be better at this. And you just can't do it. At least take comfort in the fact that you've already been a failure, and so one of the big scary things that can happen to you in life has already happened, and that will help you the rest of your life when you're trying to move forward and be brave. We talked a little bit about the mind-body connection. This was from a recent road trip. In fact, just last week I was in Alabama for a conference, and I was at Caddo Lake. How many of you have ever been to Caddo Lake State Park? Stunning, isn't it? Absolutely stunning. And you can see, of course, on a map that Uncertain, Texas is 2 miles up the road. How could I not go and check in on Foursquare in Uncertain, Texas? Really. The same way I had to check in Chunky, Mississippi on Foursquare, because you just have to do it, right? Well, I was driving because I also wanted to get a copy of the city limits sign because I knew I would use it in a slide, presentation somewhere. But then I passed this, and in a spray of mud and mosquitoes there in East Texas, I pulled off the road because I said, "Holy bleep, the Church of Uncertain." Aren't we all members of the congregation of the Church of Uncertain? Okay? The difference is the brave people are able to cope with that uncertainty better perhaps than some of their peers. And that's because you test yourself mentally and push that comfort zone away. People say, let's get out of your comfort zone. If you keep testing yourself, your comfort zone widens. And pretty soon, you are comfortable in a whole bunch of situations. But you have to make yourself go through that discomfort, not once, not twice, but many, many times in order to, why thank you, in order to push out that comfort zone. And yes, you're going to be uncertain, but you're going to be willing to move forward anyway. If you keep doing the things that you already know how to do, when you come up against something that you don't know how to do it, you won't know what to do. Okay? So you will be part of the very nervous, small, quiet people in the Church of Uncertain who really step back and have a small comfort zone around themselves and have a tough time being brave because they have not tested their limits enough. But we're all in this church, absolutely, every one of us. Travel. Travel makes you brave. I have lived as an expat 3 times now in the Middle East and in Asia and in Europe. And I feel now at this point that there's probably no place on the globe that I can be dropped that I will not be, if not comfortable, at least have an attitude of, oh, this will turn out fine. But the biggest test for me was living in Japan, where I didn't speak the language. I don't read kanji. And I had to navigate things like subway systems that, of course, I can't read the kanji above it, but reading for Ibisu, Osaka, and Rinkai line in English isn't real helpful either, because I don't know what that is either, okay? But by constantly going to places where I felt uncomfortable and making mistakes, I still remember standing in front of on a train station in Finland. And if you've ever seen the Finnish language, it's some bizarre stuff, and there was lots and lots of vowels and a couple of consonants with an arrow that way, and lots of vowels with a couple of consonants and an arrow that way. And I was trying to go to Helsinki, and neither of them said Helsinki. And so, 50-50. I got on, 2 stops later, I figured out, wrong one, got off, went back. What's the worst that can possibly happen? So I highly recommend travel, but not always to the places that are safe, the places where everyone else has been. Go to the places where you're going to be uncomfortable. In fact, Chris Penn, just yesterday, he's at CS Penn on Twitter. Go find it. He did a blog post within the last couple of days about overcoming fear. Chris says he has a fear of heights, but every fall he has to get up and clean the leaves out of his gutter. And as he says, he makes himself do this every fall because he puts himself willingly against his fears. And as he says, he hasn't conquered his fear of heights, but he challenges it and he pushes back against it one gloppy handful of wet leaves at a time every year. It's a terrific post. I wish I'd written it. I highly recommend it to you. Do things that you don't want to do. See things, hear things, look for things that are unusual and uncomfortable. Eat bugs. Don't always go to the Olive Garden. Go someplace different. And if you have to always go to the Olive Garden, don't always get the chicken Alfredo. Okay? Push out against those comfort zones. This is my brave person's credo. It's on a sampler that hangs in my parents' house. They got it, I think, for $5 in a garage sale somewhere. But this is what you need to do all the time, every day, including those silly moments, like on Facebook, when somebody says something obnoxious or racist or stupid, and you're like, unfriend. You know, at some point, you got to call folks. You know what? I'm sorry, I disagree with that. Sorry, I disagree with that. If they have a problem, that's what the unfriend button's for. But do what's right, and don't worry about where the chips are falling. They'll fall in the right place for you. Okay? Photo credits. Go out there. Be brave. Thank you. Thank you.